This video is about using RGB Color in CSS. We're going to start by just looking at what is RGB Color. And RGB Color is really just standing for red, green, and blue. The website I'm at right now is called Color Schemer, and it just lets you play around with red, green, blue color. So I set the red, green, blue right now to be 0, 0, 0. What that means is there's no red, there's no green, and there's no blue. And if I click this button, you can see that when there's no red, green, or blue, the color is black. On the other side of that, if I had the maximum amount for each red, green, and blue, it'd be 255, because that's the highest value you can give it. 255 and 255. And this would be the opposite of black. It would be white, as demonstrated up here. Okay, now let's just imagine that I had all red and I didn't have any green and I didn't have any blue. It would show me red. And don't worry about this stuff off here for now. Color Schemer is just giving us some other colors based upon the one color we made. Now I bet you could predict what would happen if we had 0 red, we had 255 green, and 0 blue. Well, it would give us green. And the same thing would be true for blue. If you wanted to do a shade of gray, you would just have them all be the same. 25. Well, let's do a little bit bigger than that. Let's do 100, 100, 100. And you could play around with this and you could experiment with making different colors. If you start combining them, for example, if I combine red and blue, well, you might be able to guess that I might get something towards the purple end. So if let's take away that green, and now I've just got red and blue. Yeah, it gives me something on the purple side of things. And if instead of 100, I did 200 red and 200 blue, I'd get a much lighter shade. Okay. So you can start to see how red, green, blue works, and you could be very creative with this and see what different colors you could all make. I'd like to draw your attention over here to these other colors that Color Schemer has been making for us. You notice these values here. This color purple is very, very close to this one, and it's actually only off by one value in both the red. Instead of 200, they have 199, and 0, they have 0, and instead of blue of 200, they have 199. But let's look over here at the yellow. Yellow is much different. For red they have 199, for green they have 199, and for blue they have 0. Every single color that you can imagine on a computer screen is made using red, green, blue. There are no exceptions. And so when you're using CSS to style your web pages, you have to know what the red, green, and blue codes are. Now you don't necessarily have to make your own colors from scratch by somehow mixing red, green, and blue together. Often you can use websites like this to help you find the colors, and then you can just copy and paste the codes in. So let's start with a couple examples. I've got a gedit page open here, and I'm just using gedit as my text editor, but I could use any text editor. And I'm going to change well, first of all, let's look what this page looks like without changing anything. This page looks like this. Liam Neeson, and I have the quote from the new movie The Gray. Once more into the fray, into the last good fight I'll ever know. Live and die on this day, live and die on this day. So we're going to style this up a little bit using some colors. And first I'm just going to focus on this heading. So if I'm in gedit, I can see the heading right here. And let me just extend this out a little bit farther. Okay, so if I want to add in some CSS, and I'm going to use inline CSS, I have to type my style tag. And then inside quotes is where I'm going to put my CSS. So if I want to change text color, I type, and let's do background color behind the text actually, because it's easier to see. So background dash color colon, and then we have to give it the value. And as you saw before, we could just use color names, but that's kind of limited. I could type in green, and it would display green. I could type in black, and it would display black. I could type in white. I could type in yellow, and so on and so forth. But I could also use these codes. And so the codes we just used, and let's use this purple color where it was 200, 0, 200. I can use them like this. I type RGB, and then I do open and close parentheses. And now inside of these parentheses I'm going to give the 3 values. So for red, 200, green 0, blue 200. Save this and view it in the web browser, and you can see it put in this background for the heading as purple. I could obviously change that to other things as well. For example, I could do gray of 200, 200, 200, and view it, and gray just as expected. Okay, this is one way where you type RGB and then inside of parentheses give your three values for red, green, and blue. But there's another way, and the other way is actually, for some reason, and I'm not sure, it's more common, even though I think it's more confusing. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to use the alternate way. If I go back to Color Schemer, you'll notice that it didn't just give me the red, green, and blue values ranging from 0 to 255, but it gave me this code, and this is hexadecimal. That's why it says set hex. In these codes, which you see them on all of these colors, these codes are also red, green, blue, but it's a little strange because the first two characters here, the C8, that's for red. These two characters are for green, and these two characters are for blue. And you'll either see the digits 0 through 9, or you might see A, B, C, D, E, or F as well to describe the values. Without going into any more detail, just realize that these two are for red, these two are for green, these two are for blue. And what I recommend doing is, when you're using a site like Color Schemer, and there's other ones online that you could use as well, you'll often get these codes. All you need to do is copy that code and paste it in here. Now this actually won't work. What you need to do whenever you specify your codes this way is to put a pound sign before that code. Save it and view it in your web browser, and you can see that it's specified just as well that way as other ways. Okay, so we have now three ways to specify colors in RGB, or sorry, in CSS using red, green, blue, and they're these as follows. I could type purple, save it, and I could view it. Notice that the shade changed a little bit. Purple, as defined by that name, is not the same as the one we had just defined. I could use the color code, making sure to put my pound sign before that code. And lastly, the one I think makes the most sense, but isn't necessarily the most used, is you can type RGB, and then inside of parentheses you give it the three colors you wanted to. Okay, and you can specify, you can use these codes for everything in CSS when you want to use colors. Alright, that concludes this lecture. I encourage you, as you're designing your CSS pages, to experiment with all three and figure out which way works the best for you.